This is one of those videos that I'm a little scared to make. That's a lie. I'm a lot scared to make. And at the same time, I feel like it's really important. And I feel like this little voice inside my head is saying, this is important, do it anyway. And it's going to be it's going to be a longer video than I usually make. And the reason is because I feel like it's incredibly valuable. I believe that I can give you a gift that will obliterate your need to be in years and years and years of talk therapy, that will give you a tool that is incredibly powerful in shifting trauma for yourself and for others. And I'm making this video because one of my favorite humans on the entire planet just released, at the time I'm making this 2 days ago, a podcast episode about his own trauma. And that person is Tim Ferriss. Tim Ferriss is the person who, when people say, if you could have dinner with one person, living or dead, past, present, future, who would you choose? I would choose Tim Ferriss. His work has had a life-changing impact on my life. So Tim shared some trauma that he experienced as a very young child that he had not shared with many people before. And he shared because he wanted people to understand some of the things that he had used to find healing. And one of those things was called internal family systems, which is an amazing therapy. And the person who is interviewing him on this episode used a completely different way of finding healing. And there's no right or wrong way. Some people may choose one way, some may choose another. And I want to talk to you about a modality that I'll use with my clients and that I've used with myself to help a person recover from trauma and start to be able to move forward in their life instead of living in a place of trauma and feeling like it's holding you back from living your best life. So I'm going to get super vulnerable myself and talk about a specific experience from my childhood that I coded in my body as being very traumatic. Looking back, it's almost like a little silly. There's the way that we experience trauma, two people, I think Tim Ferriss said this on his podcast, two people can be in the same have the exact same experience, and one person codes it as trauma and the other person is able to easily recover and walk away from it and be okay. So this is an experience from my childhood that not only did I code as traumatic, but I think it had a really big impact on my self-esteem and on my self-talk and the way I thought of myself as a person. So after I actually did this morning, lying in my bed, I became aware of this memory and I thought, okay, I'm going to use this process that I use with my clients on myself right now. So to set this up, it's really important that you know that I am not telling you this experience to talk bad about my mom. I know that she did the best that she could, and she was acting from her own unhealed trauma. And I know for me, I have adult children and I look back and think of all the mistakes I made as a mom. So there's no judgment, but I feel like it's important to tell this story and just set up that I'm not doing it to say mean things about my mom. And I also think that the best way for me to demonstrate the way this technique works is to help you know how I have applied it to my own life. So what this technique does, and I don't really know, I learned this from Melissa Tiers. She calls it re-imprinting. And there are a lot of different ways that you can apply this. I'm going to do it differently than Melissa. I did not make this up. This is a well-known therapy treatment that many people, especially people who study NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, or hypnosis, will use. And hypnosis is something that's based on, to me, it's the most neuroscience-based modality out there because it looks at the way that we program trauma into our body and reverse engineers it to help you release it. So you're going to redirect a scene of your life. So often when a person is experiencing trauma, whether it's PTSD or perhaps any kind of childhood trauma, when they are remembering it in the first person. They're seeing it through their own eyes. They're feeling it with their own body. They're hearing it with their own ears. They're back in that scene. This is called associated in. So in a way, you could think of this as the brain. You know, if you, let's say you touch a hot stove and it burns you and you flinch, and your brain says that was hot, that's dangerous, stoves are dangerous, don't do that again. And it keeps reminding you over and over by giving you the sensation of pain. It's as if you're touching that hot stove over and over and over, and you just keep re-burning yourself. And so often people who struggle with PTSD or other forms of trauma, their brain is doing that because the part of your brain that stores trauma doesn't understand past, present, future. It doesn't understand that that event is over, but it understands that it was dangerous and it wants to keep you safe. So it keeps re-burning you to remind you that fire is hot. So this technique actually allows you to keep everything you need to learn to understand fire is hot. You know, maybe that person is dangerous. You'll remember everything that happened, but you'll be able to remember it from a place of emotional neutrality, from a place of strength, from a place of resilience. And it will help your unconscious mind understand this happened in the past and it's okay to let it go and move forward into a bright, beautiful future, continuing to stay away from fire. You know, so often, how many times do we experience a trauma in childhood and we continue to bring that into future relationships? I really believe a big reason my mom behaved the way she did as a mom is because she never understood how to heal her own trauma. So when we allow our own trauma to heal, it allows us to be more effective in every area of our lives. Okay, here I'm going to interrupt myself because I realized that I left out a really important component. If you or the person you are working with and doing the protocol I'm about to show you are currently feeling traumatized, if you think about that past event and you are just so overwhelmed, perhaps your heart starts pounding and you're experiencing anxiety or panic, or if the person or yourself is experiencing depression or sadness or a sense of hopelessness, I want you to do this step first. I'm going to teach you EFT, Emotional Freedom Technique. I used to be the biggest skeptic about this technique. It seems so silly, but there is a tremendous amount of well-researched, documented science that proves that it releases old trauma from the past really quickly. And when people were tested a year or two later, they still showed the positive effects of using this treatment. So before you begin what I'm about to teach you, I want you to use EFT, and I'm going to walk you through it right now. I highly recommend that you let yourself experience this along with me. Even if you are not feeling traumatized or unpleasant right now, if you will just take a few minutes to walk through this with me, you will kind of get it in your bones. So you're better able to walk other people through it, and you're better able to use this for yourself when you really need it. So step one is to pause this video right now and go grab a pen and paper. Any pen and paper will do. It doesn't need to be fancy. Just grab a piece of scrap paper and come back to me. Okay, good. So if you're familiar with EFT and you're a skeptic like I used to be, I encourage you just to go through these steps. You might get an aha moment and notice something that you had missed before. And if you're brand new to EFT, I want you to know this is going to feel a little silly. You're going to look a little silly, and it's okay. EFT is based on the various acupoints in the body, and you're going to lightly tap on those different points. But I want you to follow along and do it in a really specific way. Step one is to think about an event that caused distress, and think about the distress it caused or is causing currently in this moment. So for example, before I started this video, I was feeling a little bit overwhelmed and unfocused. And I thought that is not the best way for me to make a video. So I want to work on that emotion, that state of being. So if a person is experiencing trauma, they might think about that event and write down that they're feeling terrified or that they're feeling anxious or unsettled. Just notice how you're feeling and write down 2 or 3 words that describe that, the way that you're feeling about the problem right now. Don't overcomplicate it. So for example, I wrote down overwhelmed and unfocused. Okay, step 2 is to notice the intensity of what you just wrote down on a scale of 1 to 10. Notice the intent, how intensely you're feeling that right now. And it's totally okay to make it up. This works just as well if you just pretend that you know. So if your self-talk is, oh, I don't know, I can't do this, set that aside and just pretend you know and tell me how intense that is on a scale of 1 to 10. Write it down on your paper. Good. Now, I'm going to ask you a kind of strange question. That is, how do you know it's that intense? And to get the answer, I want you to physically scan your body and notice where you feel that thing you wrote down the most. It might be in your chest, it might be in your shoulders, your head. Just notice where you feel it and write that down on your paper. Again, it is okay to make it up. It's okay to guess. As long as you do this, you will experience the amazing results. Okay, so now you should have 3 things on your paper. The emotion or things that you're feeling about the problem, the intensity on a scale of 1 to 10, and where you feel it in your body. So what I want you to do is just gently with the fingers of one hand, and it doesn't matter which hand, just tap what we call the karate chop point on the side of your hand. And as you do that, I want you to repeat along with me. Even if you don't believe it, even if it's hard to say, I want you to say this. Even though I am experiencing whatever you wrote down, fill in the blank, I deeply and completely accept myself. Even though I am experiencing, I deeply and completely accept myself. Even though I am experiencing, I deeply and completely accept myself. Okay, now I'm going to guide you through tapping on various spots, and I just want you to talk about the thing that you wrote down on that paper. So for me, I would say, I'm feeling overwhelmed and unfocused. And you're just going to say those things. I feel overwhelmed and unfocused as you're tapping, but make it personal to what you wrote down. Before we start, I want to show you one important tapping point. If you feel at the base of your neck, you can feel a little bit of a ridge or a divot right there. Come down about 1 inch and come in about 1 inch, and you'll feel kind of a soft spot just beneath your collarbone. When we get there, I want you to tap on that soft spot. And here I'm using 3 fingers. You could even use your whole hand to make sure you're really getting that spot. For the rest, I just want you to use 2 fingers and simply follow along with me. Tap on the inside corner of your eyebrow, the edge of your eye. And as you do this, just say, I'm feeling unfocused and overwhelmed, or whatever it is that you wrote. So here's like a bone underneath your eye. You're going to tap gently there. Tap above your lip. I'm feeling overwhelmed and unfocused. Beneath your lip, talk about the problem. Collarbone, talk about the problem. If you notice your breathing shifting, that's the feeling of your body letting some things go. And now I want you to tap at your armpit, kind of where a bra strap is for a woman. If this is uncomfortable, you can do it like this. Okay. Now, all I want you to do is tune back into your body to that spot that you wrote down on your paper, and notice how the intensity has shifted on a scale of 1 to 10 when you think about that problem. Go ahead and try to feel it and notice how it has shifted. Isn't that amazing? So you probably just had the experience of going from, like, say, a 7 to a 2. And we're going to walk through that one more time. And what you'll find is each time you go through, it actually releases it more and more. Every time you experience a trauma or a frustration or something that makes you angry or depressed or anxious, it's actually coded in your body. Your body holds on to it. And this protocol lets your body release it. So it eliminates the need to try or to talk for hours and hours. And you'll notice that just in a minute or 2, you've already reduced that. And the amazing thing is that it's going to remain reduced as you go through this. So let's bring it down even lower. So that karate chop point in your hand, even though I am experiencing whatever you wrote down, fill in the blank, I deeply and completely accept myself. Even though I am experiencing, I deeply and completely accept myself. Even though I am experiencing, I deeply and completely accept myself. Okay, now we'll go through and just simply talk about having the problem as you tap. 2 fingers, inner eyebrow, edge of your eye, under your eye. So I could be saying, I feel overwhelmed and unfocused. Upper lip, lower lip, overwhelmed and unfocused. Collarbone. I always feel something here. And then under your arm. And again, you can do it like this. And if I can do this and look this silly on camera for you, you can do this as well. Now take a nice deep breath and just notice when you tune back into your body, try to find that feeling you had at the start and find that it has gone way down. Perhaps you can't even find it. Perhaps it's disappeared. And write down on your paper what that new number is on a scale of 1 to 10. So this is Dawson Church's form of EFT therapy. And I love Dawson Church because he has a tremendous amount of scientifically documented research about the effectiveness of EFT on people with decades of PTSD, past trauma, depression, anxiety. It's incredible the amount of proof that is out there that this silly therapy is so effective. If you geek out about the science like I do, I will put some notes wherever you're watching this video to more information. And if you want to be able to utilize this for yourself more often and for your clients, email me at lori@trancypants.com and I will send you a PDF outline of all the steps of EFT and of all the steps of the protocol that I'm teaching you on this video. Okay, now back to the trauma release protocol. So the first step of this protocol is to dissociate, to become the observer of the scene that happened. If there's one scene that tends to haunt you over and over, this first step of just simply pulling back and watching it as an observer instead of being right there in it, sometimes that's all a person needs to be able to drain away that emotion of re-traumatizing themselves over and over and step into a place of healing and strength. And I will tell you exactly how to do this in a moment. So you are going to become the director of this movie. Sometimes when I walk clients through this protocol, they get a little bit nervous and I tell them, you're not changing the past. You and I both know that this exercise isn't changing the past, but by using your imagination and allowing yourself to be creative, and yes, you can be creative, especially if your self-talk is, I can do this, I can be creative, let's just see what happens. You are re-imprinting the message on your brain in a way that lets you remember exactly what happened accurately, but not feel, I was going to say stressed out, but that's an understatement, not feel pained every time you think about it. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about how I did this. So when I was a little girl, I was raised in a really almost cult-like environment where I was raised with a lot of fear of hell, of the devil, of just not being good enough. I was afraid of all my sins. Everything I did was a sin. And I was so afraid that I was such a sinner that I was going to go to hell. So I lived in constant fear of hell. And when I was a little girl, I'm not sure how old I was in this memory, but I think I was probably about 5 or 6. I remember my mom, and this happened multiple times, but this one scene is the one that keeps plaguing me, keeps haunting me, where my mom put her hand on my forehead and said, Satan, I rebuke you in the name of Jesus. And she was insinuating that I had Satan inside of me and that the reason I was such a bad kid was because the devil was inside of me. And I remember just being so scared and thinking, if the devil is inside me, then that means that Jesus can't be in my heart. That means I'm going to go to hell and I'm such a bad person. So, man, as I'm recording this, I'm thinking of all the, like, in my mind, I'm thinking, who's going to judge me for saying this? And I'm just going to say it anyway. And the reason I want you to hear that is because you have a message too. And I want you to know that when you get over the fear of sharing it, that you are going to impact so many people. And I wouldn't be surprised if you're about to get over that fear right now. So every time I've had this memory in my mind, I've been like this tiny thing, and there's this big giant thing up over me. It's like looming over me. It almost feels like the presence of evil. And I'm in this dark, scary hallway, which was the hallway of my house. And I had a lot of fear growing up in my house. And when I have this memory and I hear my mom saying, "Satan, I rebuke you in the name of Jesus," I can like see her hand coming down towards me and feel it on me. And in my mind, she's just gigantic. So if you think about it, if that's the way a small child would record that experience. So when I've thought about it in the past, it's really been hard for me to figure out how to deal with. So what I did this morning, I thought, okay, what if I use this protocol on myself? And so the first thing I did is I imagined being the director of a movie, and that I'm looking at a movie set, and then I can see that little girl, I can see that woman in this scene. And immediately that helps me get into a place where I can just breathe, where I can realize, okay, this isn't happening to me, I'm just observing this. So this is the most important step. I have a friend named Martin Hewlett who does this exercise by having the person imagine that they're looking in through a window. Melissa Tiers, I believe, has people pretend that they're watching a movie screen. So however this is right for you, you could pretend to be a fly up on the ceiling looking down at this scene. It's just really important that you observe it as essentially a neutral third party. So in my mind, I yelled, "Cut!" And I imagined this gigantic hand just coming and picking my mom up by the back of her shirt and putting her in her room at the end of the hallway and closing the door and locking it. And this wasn't like a mean, menacing act. It was just almost comical. Like I'm seeing her in my mind. Her legs are dangling. She's kind of moving around, and it's almost like she was given a timeout. And I imagined her being back in that room. The door is locked, but she's peaceful. It's like she's maybe perhaps even gaining her own healing. So then I thought, okay, who do I need to bring into this scene? And I actually imagined Jesus being there, which is kind of strange because I'm not super religious anymore. But as a child, Jesus was like the comfort for me. That's who I thought of as being loving and kind and caring. And so now Jesus is there standing in front of that little girl, of that small, younger me. And I still kind of, as I was observing this as the director, I still kind of felt that ominous feeling being in that hallway. So I thought, okay, I'm just going to cue the stage lights and I'm going to completely flood this hallway with light. And that created a shift where I started to feel a little bit better, but I thought I need to change this scene even more. So I imagined now Jesus and I are walking outside, and I grew up in the country. This is so silly. It's crazy that I'm telling you guys this, but when you use your imagination, the imagination is the language of the unconscious mind. And when you use your imagination, you'll be amazed at the healing that happens. So now this little girl, this little 5-6-year-old girl is walking outside with Jesus. They're holding hands and he's talking to her. And as they walk, it was almost like I imagined them kind of being in a bubble of safety, because my childhood home had a lot of fear and scariness attached to it because of some of the stuff that happened in my childhood. And in my mind, we're walking away from the house. We're surrounded by the beauty of being out in the country. My swing set is over to the side. My swing set was always a place of comfort for me. And I thought, okay, how can I make this scene even more, like, feel even better? I'm thinking this as the director. And I remembered how, as a child, all I wanted was to be Wonder Woman. And before the age of 7, kids kind of suspend judgment. They don't understand what's possible and what's not. So I truly believed that I could grow up and be Wonder Woman. So in my mind, as I'm walking with Jesus, he's giving me a Wonder Woman costume, and I see the boots start to form on my feet and the costume start to form on my body, and like the Wonder Woman headband. And Wonder Woman sometimes wore a cape. When, you know, growing up, what my Wonder Woman was Linda Carter, and sometimes she had a cape, but not very often. And so I even had the cape. And I noticed as this little girl is walking with Jesus, all of a sudden she's like, her posture is getting more confident. Her breathing is getting more calm. She's just feeling more peaceful. And it helped me feel this sense of, for me, Wonder Woman symbolizes hope. It symbolizes, I still want to be Wonder Woman, because to me, when I watched that show growing up, I saw a woman who had compassion and who had the power to wipe out the bad guys and help the good guys. So in my mind, the idea of Wonder Woman is underneath is the idea of hope, the idea of being able to help people transform. And that's a big reason I'm sharing this video with you, because when you gain this understanding, it allows you to start to transform your trauma. Did you know that it's scientifically proven that every time you access a memory, every time you think about a memory, that it changes? The physical structure of your brain literally changes. The neural pathway of that memory changes. So if you talk about that trauma when you're feeling sad or scared or anxious, you actually pour that negative emotion into the memory and make it even worse than it was before. So this is one reason I'm not a huge fan of talk therapy. Like I said, I know people that it has helped. If that's right for you, great. But the reason I'm showing you this technique is because there's neuroscience behind it. When you go through and you re-imprint the way you think of that memory, it physically changes the structure of your brain and the neural pathway of that memory, and allows you to remember everything you need to learn from it, but have peace instead of angst in its place. So I'm watching this scene, and I did all this as I'm laying in bed this morning, and I'm imagining Jesus walking with this little girl. And an important side note, I'm not a terribly visual person. I've in fact said I can't visualize. So the way I imagine this, I don't know how to explain, but this will work really well for you, even if you're not a visual person. You can imagine it in whatever way is right for you. If you've ever daydreamed, if you've ever dreamed at night, if a person can tell you a story and you can imagine the story, then you can do this. So I thought, okay, this is awesome. I'm feeling better, but I want to get out of this, like out of my childhood property altogether. So I imagined that I could bring Jesus and 5-6-year-old Lori into the living room of the apartment I live in right now. And my apartment, it's funny because I can see the light starting to shine in as I'm making this video. The reason I chose this apartment is because it has 12-foot ceilings and huge, massive windows that face east. So it's flooded with light. And so I imagined Jesus and 5-year-old Lori sitting on the couch, just flooded with light in my peaceful apartment that I absolutely love, and him helping her to understand that she is worthy, that she is valuable, that she is not possessed by Satan. And it started to feel better and better. And I thought, okay, how can I make this scene even more amazing? And so I imagined that instead of Jesus, it was Lori. It was right now, today, Lori sitting on that couch, comforting that little girl who's still in her Wonder Woman costume, and just helping her know, you're okay. You are so brave. You're going to make it through this. You are worthy. You are valuable. You are loved. And this is a form of parts therapy that Tim Ferriss talked about on his podcast, the internal family systems. It's all about working with the different parts of us. And if you've ever said, part of me really wants to do this, but part of me is holding me back, sometimes that part of you that's holding you back is just a traumatized child that needs to be hugged and loved. And when you go back and you rewrite that story, you recreate that memory, you redirect that movie, you become the director of your own life. And it allows that part of you to heal and to transform and to do what we call integrate, which is just a fancy way of saying, understand that you're loved and that you're worthy and that you get to have a good life, that the past does not have to predict the future, that you are resilient, that you made it through, that you're okay now, and that you can move forward and have an amazing life. So after you've done that step and you've redirected this movie, and this is something you can do on your own or guide someone through, what you want to do is go back and remember to kind of test if that memory has shifted. And what you're going to find is that you've kind of ruined your ability to be associated into that memory anymore. You don't know how anymore to see. So for me, I don't feel like I'm in the dark hallway. I don't see the hand coming down on me. I don't feel that ominous, scary presence when I think about this memory. Now I can see it as if I'm looking at it on a movie screen, and I can remember everything that happened. I can remember what that little girl went through, but it doesn't feel scary anymore. And the amazing thing is, what I expect in the coming days is to feel my self-esteem improving more and more. And my self-esteem, you guys, I am such a different person from who I was when I started this work, when I learned this. But by doing these processes and trusting the simplicity of them, the person that I am today is unrecognizable from the insecure, shy, little person who wouldn't even make eye contact that I used to be. So like I said, that final step is just to go back and remember and notice that the pain isn't there anymore. And if it is, you might need to go back, make sure you're the director, that you pull yourself out. You can imagine you're watching through a window, you are directing a movie, you are a fly on the ceiling. However it works for you, make sure that you see that younger version of yourself in the movie, not that you are being the younger version of yourself as you remember it. Okay, I hope this was helpful. I hope that if this rubs you the wrong way, if I said something offensive, please know that that is not my heart. I don't mean to disparage people who embrace talk therapy or who use talk therapy, but this has been my experience, and this has been a path that has brought me a tremendous amount of healing. And I have seen transformations. I have had clients tell me, I have been dealing with this for 20 years, and this is the first time I felt freedom and relief and peace, and it took 10 minutes. So thank you for listening to my story, and thank you for being brave, and know that you are resilient and you can do this. Thank you for watching. I would love to hear about your experience if you use this to release trauma for yourself or a loved one. You can email me at lori@trancypants.com, and also send me an email there if you'd like me to send you a PDF outline of the exact steps for EFT and for this trauma release protocol. Have an amazing day.